Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Earth Day Network, I want to thank our panelists for joining us this afternoon and to all of you in the audience. I think everyone on this panel would agree that the climate crisis is the defining moment, environmental moment of our time. What we are facing is more than just an environmental crisis, we believe. It is a crisis in leadership and political will. 40 years ago, the first Earth Day was organized in response to industrial pollution and to the unprecedented impacts that 150 years of industrialization had on our children and our society. That effort launched the modern environmental movement, a movement that was predicated for the first time on the health and well-being of people and the sustainability of our fragile Earth. Today we find ourselves faced with a great challenge, a challenge that comes with an even greater opportunity for change. The urgent need to combat climate change also presents us with the opportunity to invest, to innovate, and to win the race for green technology and a green society. Earth Day helped create monumental change, from building a responsible democratic society to advances in environmental laws and regulations and to innovations in green technology. Earth Day 2010 also presents us with a unique moment in time and the next opportunity to unite and mobilize the environmental community, business, and government to combat climate change. We are at the beginning of a new revolution, one that perhaps our leaders fail to recognize. Like the Industrial Revolution before us, Congress, our businesses, and our people can help build a new green revolution, one that exports advances in environmental technology, creates green jobs, and launches a new clean energy economy and allows the U.S. to lead and not to follow. But a green energy economy is not a pipe dream. It is the only long-term solution to our climate crisis, to economic growth, and to our collective global security. A national framework that caps carbon emissions and promotes sustainability will give business and innovators the certainty that they need to spur investment in new technology. Instead, our federal government is playing catch-up to our cities, which Mayor Becker will address in a few minutes, and to our states, and to countries like China and India. Whoever leads will reap. Until now, the responsibility for solving climate change has been in the hands of individuals and consumers, business, cities, and states. The time has come for the U.S. government to lead, to demonstrate their commitment to solving climate through legislative leadership and courage. We can't really wait any longer. On behalf of all Americans, we're here today to say to our elected leaders, let's pass legislation by April 22nd, the 40th anniversary of the first Earth Day. We want to see, and believe we can see, bipartisan action, bold action, and swift action. In keeping with the course-changing momentum that began 40 years ago, we also urge Congress to adjourn on Earth Day after they pass the legislation, as they did 40 years ago, and to go home and talk to their constituents about how we build this new economy. We ask each member of the House and Senate to demonstrate their commitment to the environment, like Congressman Inslee has done, not only to the people of the United States, but to people around the globe. Earth Day began as a catalyst for positive environmental change. This April, we intend to make history. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce a representative, Jay Inslee from Washington. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm embarrassed that I would be introduced before Denis Hayes, who is, if not a constituent, a good friend from Seattle, but I would be speaking first since he spoke and organized the first Earth Day. Just a couple comments. I think this year we ought to think of it as Earth Day with maybe a new title, which is Jobs for Earth Day. Because what we have come to recognize is that the best job-creating potential in the United States is to care for Earth. And the reason I say that is it's very clear that the Chinese are not going to wait for any agreement to move forward on clean jobs, and neither should we. And that Earth Day is a perfect target to set for us to really create a job creation energy plan for the future. We have passed it in the House. It is ready for passage in the Senate. And we would encourage our friends in the Senate to adopt Jobs for Earth Day as their target date to really adopt a clean energy future for this country. And there are two pressing timelines that demand action by that Jobs for Earth Day. One is what is going on in the world economy. We went to China 4 months ago with Nancy Pelosi, met the Premier, the President, got the whole Cook's tour of the Chinese economy. And I just picked China because perhaps they're the largest and most aggressive, but this is going on in many countries. China is investing $12 million an hour in clean, renewable sources of energy. They are committed to doing 30 gigawatts of energy by wind in the next 2 decades. They have just announced the creation of the world's largest photovoltaic plant in the world in western China. They are fully committed to be engaged in this race. And this Earth Day, I hope that the U.S. Senate helps us get into the race, in the Jobs for Earth race, by in fact passing clean energy legislation. And that is the right time frame, because the Chinese are not waiting for whatever happens after Copenhagen. They're not waiting for the results from Massachusetts Senate race. They recognize this as the #1 economic opportunity in the world, and we do as well. So that economic race is on, and we need to get engaged in it. And I just to tell you, speaking for where I am, I believe America can be competitive in this race. And the reason is, I look around where I live, and Denis and I, our friends and neighbors work for Boeing. They're making the world's most energy efficient airliner. They work for Verdian, that's finding a way to make our computer systems much more energy efficient. They work for 3-Tier, that's the world's leading system of finding renewable energy sources. They work for McKinsey's, which is a world leader in making our businesses and homes more energy efficient. They work for Magnadrive, that's figured out a way to make our electrical drive systems a third more energy efficient. So we see the potential in our neighborhoods of our neighbors. Now they need the U.S. Senate to help them become competitive internationally to get that job done. That's the #1 race. The second one, or perhaps the most short-term pressing one, the second one is a recognition that the time frame we are on, which is action this year, is not Al Gore's time schedule. It is Mother Nature's. And she is demanding. And she is acting very, very quickly in some very, very damaging ways. I just met this afternoon, and to continue my theme that this is an economic issue for the United States, this afternoon I woke up just an hour and a half ago. I met with the shellfish growers, who are the leading shellfish growers maybe in the world in the Pacific Northwest. But they haven't had a crop of baby oysters for 2 years. And it appears to be that the water is becoming too acidic to allow the larva, in a very critical 3-day period of oyster larvae, can't grow in acidic conditions. And this isn't global warming, this is acidification, where there's no debate about this whatsoever, about the acidification of the oceans. This is a time frame where we're not going to have viable corals within a century because of the acidification of the oceans. And this is not an abstract time frame, it is one based on physics and biology. So we are in a race biologically. A dozen continents, another delay, and it is an economic issue for the United States, where we're losing some of these natural resource-based industries if we don't act this year. So we're calling for the Senate to follow the House and join us. We're capable of doing this, and the reason is, thank goodness, we have some Republicans in the Senate who recognize this economic opportunity. Lindsey Graham is working with Senator Kerry. There are some others that potentially can help us find a somewhat bipartisan solution to this problem. And we're encouraging them to be as inspired economically as they were at the first Earth Day when Denis Hayes inspired them to get going. Thank you.